Hi there. So I wanted to do a little gentle-ish critique of the teachings of Brené Brown. And I know this is probably going to upset some of her fans if they even find this video, since I don't actually have a large following for my videos, so I'm not that worried about it. But I wanted to do this because, well, first of all, she's been in the news because she pulled her podcast off of Spotify because she believes that Joe Rogan's podcast is spreading COVID misinformation. And I find that type of censorship to be a bit reprehensible. I am very much pro free speech. And I don't like it when somebody uses their celebrity position to try to bully other people into what the rest of us can or cannot hear. Who are you, Brené Brown, to determine what I should listen to, or what I'm able to actually articulate, or not even articulate, but analyze and decide for myself? So I have a problem with her position on deciding for everybody else who gets to hear different things on podcasts, whether you agree with them or not. And so when I heard about that, I was like, oh, I knew there was a reason why I didn't like her. So I'm going to also get into some of her teachings, because she has been this goddess among many women as sort of spiritual guru for the last 10 years. And I'm sure she's a nice person, well-meaning. So I apologize. I don't want to come off as being like overly mean, but her writings just rubbed me the wrong way from the get-go. And there was just something about the whole thing where I was just like, ugh, I didn't like it. And then I'd hear these people gushing about her and, oh, she's so transformative. And I would just be like, oh, and I couldn't quite articulate exactly what it was about it that bothered me. But now that she's come out and stood up for censorship and totalitarianism and authoritarianism, I can say I know exactly what it is that bothers me about what she teaches. And I even don't like the use of this term Karen, but I'm going to use it because it kind of quickly encapsulates what has always bothered me and I didn't know how to say succinctly. This is Karen spirituality. Okay. And so it is not a surprise ultimately that she's coming down on the side of censorship, because I believe that underlying a lot of what she teaches is this kind of Karen quality. And so I'm going to analyze some of her quotes and some of the things that she said to explain why that is and why some of it's problematic. Now, in full disclosure, I have never actually read one of her books entirely, but the whole reason I even knew about her is about, like, well, I think she started to come into fame about like 2012 is when that one book of hers became pretty popular. I was living in Austin, Texas. And when I was in Austin, I had joined some church groups to get to know people and to get some emotional support and whatnot. And let me tell you, one of the places, and I'm sure you probably know about this if you've ever been to church groups, and I'm not saying, look, there's annoying people everywhere, so it's not just Christians. If you ever want if you ever want to deal with some unnecessary drama or weirdness, or just like women being like oddly I don't know, strange, join a church life group and you will experience some things that might shock you. And maybe some of them are really good, but I was even just talking to a friend recently where she had been in this life group and they were getting really upset with her over something, which I won't get into here, particularly because this is going to be on YouTube, as well as my also have mirrors of my channel, by the way, on Rumble and Odyssey, FYI. But there's this whole thing where it's like, on the surface, it's like, oh yes, we're going to be nice and loving and we're going to be Christian, but then like somehow that just doesn't completely translate into the behavior. So in this case, there was a couple things that happened in some of my life groups where I just ended up leaving. And one of them, I was just explaining something, I don't even remember what it was. And I was giving an example of something. And I made the mistake of saying you instead of we. Now, this relates exactly to how Brené Brown writes and what I think in part drives me crazy about how she articulates everything. there has been this trend in recent years to change this idea of the second person when you're writing from you to we. So I might say, hey, in general, when you go to the store, you might find that the prices are higher. I'm saying this generally, not to anybody specifically. When you go to the store, you might find prices are higher. The new trend is to not say it like that, because some people have decided this is accusatory. So you have to say, when we go to the store, then we might find that prices are higher. But I have a problem with the we. See, some people have a problem with the you. I have a problem with the we. Not so much I'm going to like sit there and like make a big stink about it. But my problem with the we is that in some ways it assumes that I'm on board with you and what you're saying when maybe I'm not, you know? If you say a you to me, I might be like, okay, well, that's your opinion. So for me, I don't think the we is necessarily any better. Maybe there is no good grammatical solution. But the reason I'm explaining this is because a lot of what Brené Brown writes is we. And she assumes that we all agree or have the same experience that she does when we do not, as opposed to just saying, here's my opinion or whatever. Now, I struggle with this actually because I write and I teach. And so I have to be mindful of the fact that quite a few people now are possibly triggered by using the word you, and I might end up alienating somebody that I don't want to alienate because I'm not saying things properly. But at some point, it's like, you know what? I have to just be myself and I have to be authentic, is one of the things that Brené Brown teaches. So if you don't resonate with me, that's fine. Or if we don't resonate with me, then that's okay. I don't need to have a billion students or a billion clients. I just need a small number of people who get some value out of what I do with enough to help me survive in the world. And that's it. So I can't please everybody. But anyway, so I'm in this life group, back to the life group. I'm in this life group and I was saying something like, well, yeah, you know, when you go out and you date some guys and then you have a problem with the guys, and something just innocuous like that. And the woman who was running the life group got really triggered by what I was saying. And then she went and she had this like, she stopped me in the middle in front of everybody and started saying, you can't say you, that's accusatory. And I was like, I wasn't trying to accuse everybody. And she made me feel so awful. And it was just weird. And so I ended up leaving. This was supposed to be a support group for women. I ended up leaving and I ended up writing an email to, actually, it turns out that I think that her father was the one who was organizing groups. I actually ended up writing an email and saying, you know what, I felt very attacked and I wasn't trying to attack anybody. And so anyway, so there's this kind of like weird thing that you can kind of inadvertently get tripped up in life groups. So this other life group that I was in, there was a woman there who, I mean, she was nice, very nice, and a lawyer. And I don't know what it was about me that bothered her, or how, or maybe she thought she was trying to help me. I don't think she had a bad intention. So I'm not trying to say that she had a bad intention, but she was obsessed with a Brené Brown. And Brené Brown's whole thing at that time was dare to be vulnerable. Well, I had already been in that group and I had cried my eyes out about some things that were going on in my life. I feel like I had been pretty authentic and vulnerable. If you go into a group of strangers and you're willing to bawl your eyes out, I think that you're already fairly okay with the vulnerable part. And I'm not sure what it was, or she didn't like the way I was articulating myself. And she got into it with me on Facebook. And she kept telling me, like, I want you to read Brené Brown. You need to read this book by Brené Brown. And I went and I read some excerpts from it. And I was like, I'm sorry, I read those excerpts and it just doesn't resonate with me. It just kind of turns me off. I'm not, you know, I don't know exactly how I said it, but she kept kind of pushing it at me. And then I started getting like, kind of like, irritated. And that's one of my bugaboos. I have to make sure I can flame the pants off of people if I'm not careful. And sometimes I don't even mean to do it. So I was just like, God, get off my case. Like, I don't want to read Brené Brown's book. Right? Like, stop it. So that was it. That was like the end of we didn't really have a friendship, but like, it was just, anyway. So ever since then, I've had this like, Brené Brown, why are people pushing Brené Brown on me? I'm not into her. So let me, that's my story so far. So let me get into the actual teachings and I'll explain exactly what it is. I think I have a bit more ability to articulate why this is to me like Karen spirituality. And ultimately, I think it helps a certain type of person who maybe needs to hear that right now. So I don't want to say it's completely valueless, but I have some issues with the way the focus of it. And I also, well, let me just say, and I don't know how to perfectly articulate this too, but I really think there's a problem with, in particular, I'm a woman, so I can say this. I think there's a problem with women in America where there's this weird disconnect that women are having, and quite a few of them, and actually there's some guys who do this too, where it's like you talk to them and it's like they're not all there. And there's this kind of like weird disconnect that they have with their spirits or something. I still haven't completely figured out what exactly it is. So when I do, or if I do, maybe I won't, maybe I'll share that. But it's like, I don't know. And some of it is related not just to Brene Brown, but some new age spirituality can encourage it, because this whole law of attraction thing, I'm only focusing on the positive. And so sometimes you'll see it in that arena where people are just like, they're so like positive that there's like a plastic force field or something that you can't quite see or penetrate, and they're not being genuine. And so there's that going on. Then there's this weird like oversensitivity that everybody has, where it's like, for example, me just using you in an example where that woman got really triggered, where people can get easily triggered by just poof, and they'll go from like 0 to 1,000 in a second. And then there's this kind of weird, I don't know, it's just some weird, I can't quite figure it out. I mean, I think that there's a couple of cultural trends that are in part causing this. It might also be related to the severe uptick in the use of antidepressants, which can disconnect people from their genuine emotions. So I think that has to be a big part of it. Also social media, also the disconnection from God that people have been experiencing, and maybe some other things. So yeah, so those types, maybe not everybody, and there could be completely healthy, wonderful people that love Brene Brown and they just have a difference of opinion with me. So I don't want to make it out like everybody who reads Brene Brown as some sort of weird borderline personality disorder thing going on. But I'm just saying that there's this weird trend that I'm seeing, and I wish I could articulate it better. Anyway, so let me talk about, now I also want to make another comment here. I think some of this is also driven by suburbs. Okay, so if you go and live in the suburbs and you have, particularly for, they talk about white privilege, and I'm really not into that term because I think it's very divisive and makes things worse ultimately. But let's just talk about privilege. So it's not about race, but it's just about having a certain amount of money and living in a certain bubble. And so if you live in the suburbs all your life and you've kind of had this comfy life where it's not like everything's been handed to you. Everybody has challenges, even suburban people have challenges, but it's like there's a kind of a deadness, a spiritual deadness in the suburban landscape. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I grew up in the suburbs. I hated the suburbs growing up. I felt the deadness living there and it bothered me. And then I went and became a city dweller. Cities have their other problems. So I spent most of my adult life living in cities, large, Los Angeles mostly, which isn't necessarily a great place to be. And then only in the last couple of years have I lived in the suburbs, because I moved in with my parents as I was recovering from a sickness. And now I'm like, oh boy, at least I'm in a beautiful area where there's nature. So it's not completely suburban. There's like a nature aspect to it. But if it weren't for that nature aspect, I'd be climbing the walls. But there's definitely this kind of, there are Karens in this neighborhood, not everybody, but you can tell who the Karens are, and they're not friendly. It's weird. Like they just kind of ignore you when you walk on by, but they're the ones that put in the signs in their yards, like, hey, it's Jordan's 15th birthday. Hey, it's Black Lives Matter Day. Hey, I'm for, against climate change. Like they're the sign people, they're always putting the signs in the yards, but then when you actually try to talk to them, they're just like completely disengaged, not friendly, and like cold, weird. Okay, so Karens. And some of them are not all of them are blonde, but all right. So let me talk about this. Brené Brown. Here's a page that I found. It's on a website called The Purpose Fairy. Brené Brown. Oh, and that's the other thing about Brené Brown. Who puts a little apostrophe over the E in their name? I mean, that to me is just like, okay, so when I was going to school, and then I was in high school in the 1980s, and they had movies like Revenge of the Nerds or whatever, and they had, well, or that, and then that movie Heathers, right? The snobby popular girl would be the one named Brene with the little apostrophe over her E. You know what I'm saying? It's like the other name that would be like that in the 80s was Tara. I hated that name, Tara. And there was like a certain type of person that would be named Tara, even though we didn't even have any Taras in our school. Somehow I remember hating that name, Tara. So Brene, it's not her fault that her parents named that, but if my parents had named me that with the little apostrophe over the name, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's just too pretentious for me. Anyway, so here's what she writes. Not Brené Brown, the Purpose Fairy writes, I have learned so many beautiful and life-changing lessons from reading Brené Brown's books, and from watching many of her inspiring and empowering videos. Today, I would like to share with you 21 of these life-changing lessons, trusting that they will benefit you as much as they have benefited and are still benefiting me. Well, I'm glad that they've helped you. Okay. Brené Brown is quoted as saying, I carry a small sheet of paper in my wallet that has written on it the names of people whose opinions of me matter. To be on that list, you have to love me for my strengths and struggles. What? What, girlfriend? Seriously? Like, you actually have written down a list of names that you carry in your wallet of people that deserve your love only because they love you for your strength and your struggles? Can we say narcissist? I'm serious. Like, how is that in any way like positive and empowering? That's just creepy to me. Like, it's seriously creepy to me. First of all, that you would write the list down. Second, that you would need to carry a reminder of it in your wallet. Third, that the only reason people are lovable to you is that they love you for what you deem to be the lovable aspects of you. And then number four, that you would want to announce this to the world as a spiritual practice to do. I just find that really, really disturbing and abhorrent. I do. Like, no wonder this woman is like telling Spotify she's pulling her podcast, because like, if you don't like fit her little idea of lovable, she won't put you on her wallet list. Okay. So, okay. Right off the bat, I have a problem with that. And I have a problem with that as a spiritual teaching. It's just wrong. Okay. Then the next quote, what's the greater risk? Letting go of what people think, or letting go of how I feel, what I believe, and who I am? Yeah, see, this is kind of like, this is a bit, how do I say this? Let me read that again. She says, what's the greater risk? Letting go of what people think, or letting go of how I feel, what I believe, and who I am? So her either or is on the one side, what other people think, and then the other, how I feel, what I believe, and who I am. And that in her mind, these two things are in complete opposition, and you can't have both. Okay. Now, let me just say, I said earlier in this video, if you love Brené Brown and you're offended by this talk that I'm having, and you decide you don't ever want to hear from Stephanie again, that's totally cool, fine. But you're also welcome to give me some feedback. So I'm not going to hold on to that if somebody gets upset with me because I disagree about her teachings. That said, there are times when people might give me some feedback that maybe I want to listen to because they actually have a point to make. Like, maybe I can tend to get upset about some things, and maybe if my friend is saying, hey, Stephanie, calm down. You are completely overreacting and you just need to calm down because you're going to be okay. If I'm in Brené Brown territory, I'm going to say, you're invalidating my feelings and my experience. You don't love me for who I am. I'm taking you off my wallet list. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a big danger here of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And if you have this kind of like either or thinking of like, what I think and feel and believe is like so sacrosanct that I am never going to listen to anybody else outside of me, that is very problematic. It just is. And this is, there's a kind of a continual narcissism that I think is underlying a lot of this spirituality, which is ultimately why it's problematic. It sounds nice on the surface and it is appealing to our ego. And that is precisely why it is very deceptive. Okay. Here's the next quote that this woman on Purpose Theory finds inspiring, which I find like, gag me with a spoon. Talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. Okay. There's another thing she's going to say later, but well, maybe I can, no, I don't want to get out of place, but just remember this. Why do you need to talk? I mean, I'm not saying you should be beating yourself up all the time, but like, you're too focused on yourself if you're worrying about how you are talking to yourself. Do you see what I'm saying? There's an element of like going from beating yourself up all the time and then worrying about that to like trying to fix that by overcompensating. It's still, you are too caught up in yourself. Get your head out of your and just get over yourself. I don't mean to sound like mean by saying that. I'm just saying at some point you just got to get over yourself. And I'll get into why later. Once again, that's why I think this video is going to be very triggering, but I just have to be, I'm going to be authentic to who I am. Follow her advice. All right. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. I think setting boundaries is a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. And you know, on the surface, I don't have a problem with that necessarily. I don't think this quote is necessarily like that problematic, but to me, it's problematic in the context of everything else that she says, because it's still focused on this like excessive obsession with self-love. And that ultimately is the problem. And I'll explain what the antidote to that is and why you don't actually need, I'm not saying you need to like hate yourself, but why focusing on self-love is the wrong focus. Okay. Let's see. If we share our shame story with the wrong person, they can easily become one more piece of flying debris in an already dangerous storm. Well, yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with that advice. And particularly if you're overly or even underly sensitive, if you share something with somebody who is not going to listen to it with kindness and they're mean to you in response, yeah, it's gonna potentially hurt you more. But I think ultimately what we want to get to is the point of like, where you're not so affected by somebody else's opinion that it would be a problem either way. And so it's okay. I said, not everything that she says is horribly bad, but it's just, there's just some things mixed in with it that make it problematic. Okay. Authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. Here's that we, you see how she uses that all the time. Authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. Well, you know, on its own, I would agree with that. I think where I have the issue with it, once again, is that this is still wrapped up in the greater purpose of the narcissism. But I think hopefully as I continue on, you will see why that is. And once again, these are also quotes that are kind of being taken out of context, but it's really the easiest way for me to do this. I might read something longer from her. Like I said, not everything that she says is bad. She has a bit of good advice mixed in with some of the Karen spirituality. Okay. Then she says, if you trade your authenticity for safety, you may experience the following: anxiety, depression, eating disorders, addiction, rage, blame, resentment, and inexplicable grief. And then the Purpose Fairy has this highlighted as a graphic. Okay, so this is one of those things that sounds very profound on the surface. And it might hit people who have been dealing with things like anxiety or depression or resentment or all of these problems. And they go, oh, I need to be more authentic. This is really resonating with me. Now, I have suffered from anxiety, depression, rage for sure, grief, blame, resentment. I have never had an eating disorder or an addiction. But I think where the problem is with this is that what does she mean by authenticity? And this kind of relates to that last quote. What exactly is this authenticity that she's speaking about? And what is this safety that she's speaking about? Because there is this kind of idea that we have in our culture right now that one of the most important things is for us to be ourselves and express ourselves, but often it's in many ways still another type of performance. So if I'm putting myself out there on a social media platform and I'm saying, oh, look, I'm being authentic, I'm showing you a picture of me without my makeup on or whatever, there's still in some weird way that there's a performance aspect to it. There's still some sort of way that the idea of like, I'm being authentic, so I'm risking my safety, is somehow, that is still in a relation to other people and still in relation to some idea of like how I am interacting with them and the quote unquote safety that I might be feeling with them. So I'm still not completely articulating exactly what the problem with is. I hope that you're kind of getting it as I'm getting in there, because it's in some ways it's very subtle what the issue is with this, but there's still this like extensive self inward focus and this almost like a obsessive worry about what is going on in here in relation to what's going on out there. And what she is teaching in some ways still gets them people caught down in here. I will continue. Hopefully this will become clearer as I continue. In terms of my authenticity, by the way, I've noticed I set up on Zoom. I'm recording this on Zoom. I set up on Zoom. See if you notice this. I set up on Zoom to just put a little bit of lipstick on me because I hate having to put makeup on just to get on a video. And so I notice if I sit back, sometimes the lipstick goes away. You see, see it goes away. So if you're noticing that, that's me not being authentic because I have a little bit of a filter on my face. Is this my video makeup? Okay. Those who have a strong sense of love and belonging have the courage to be imperfect. Yeah, this is still bringing you back down in here. When you get to a place where you understand that love and belonging, your worthiness is a birthright and not something you have to earn, anything is possible. Oh, that sounds so inspiring and so lovely on the surface. It's still all about this kind of inherent narcissism. Oh, I have to be worthy. This is my birthright. Now anything is possible. I'm not saying that people aren't wonderful and worthy. I'm just saying that if your whole focus is trying to make yourself be more worthy, you're still too focused on this. And I'll explain when I get to the end of these quotes what I think it is better to focus on and why, and how it's related to spirituality. If you can get that far. Okay. You are imperfect. You are wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging. Okay, that's nicey nice. Imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we're all in this together. What? No, they're not. Imperfections are not inadequacies. They are reminders that we're all in this together. Yeah, that sounds nice, but like logically, it doesn't really make any sense. And it has somebody being imperfect about something has nothing to do with that we're being all in this together. Now, I've recently taken like this singing class with the brothers Corin, and they're lovely, and they're both like super hot and really cute and like extremely positive. And their whole point of you can see maybe some of my other videos where I was practicing my singing, which is not so great. So their whole point is like daring to suck, right? And they trying to encourage people to sing who maybe aren't naturally good singers. And it's in some ways it's surprising to me how many people like carry this shame around singing, like, oh, somebody told me when I was younger that I was a bad singer. Now I've never sung again. And it's like, here's kind of my bottom line opinion about it. As a teacher of sound healing and practitioner of sound healing, everybody should sing and have fun with it. It's okay if you suck, and it's okay to just acknowledge that you suck. And it's okay to just know that you're not an amazing, perfect human in everything that you do. This has nothing to do with us being all together. It's just like this, there's a weird reverse kind of narcissism in that type of shame of like, well, the only way that I could do something is if I have to be amazing at it so I can impress everybody else. No, you can just acknowledge that you're not so good at things. You know what? Uh, I can sing pretty well up to a point, and there's certain aspects of my singing that need a lot of work and really aren't that good. I'm not going to sit here and beat myself up about it. That in some ways is the narcissism. Beating yourself up, go, oh, I need to be a better singer. No, I don't. I'm not trying to sing as a professional, Celine Dion type of singer. It's okay that my singing isn't completely perfect. It's fine. There's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having fun. I'm going to take some classes. I'm going to learn how to get better at my technique and whatever. I'm not very good at, like, let's say I went and decided to do ice skating, which I really can't do so much right now because I got the vertigo, but like, I'm not very good at it, but I could get better at it if I practice. I don't have to beat myself up or make it into this existential crisis. A lot of the self-help gets us stuck into these loops of overly worrying about our worthiness and stuff, and we don't even just let it go. I hope this is I hope some people are probably watching this and turned it off already, or they're mad. I'm hoping in some ways this is more inspiring. It's like, just let it go. I know it's hard sometimes. Okay, shame is the most powerful master emotion. It's the fear that we're not good enough. Yes, and I know I've certainly felt shame about certain things, but for me, shame isn't even so much that I'm not good enough. Shame is like, ooh, I'm bad, and not good enough doesn't mean like I'm good enough in performance. Like I had to let me see, look at a good example is this. Oh, I did something that was shameful when I was a kid. I had an assignment to do, and we were going to be recorded with a video for this. I don't even know why we were doing videos, and I just couldn't come up with anything. So at the last minute, I panicked and I recited a funny poem that a kid in the friend of the family's had did, and I passed it off as my own. It's not something that I ever did before since. And honestly, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, why the hell did I do that? That is so not me. I was like really kind of straight-laced back then. It was a shameful thing to do, and I should have felt some shame for it, because you know what? That was a bad thing. And that's genuine shame for something bad that you did. And you should feel like, some people try to say there's a difference between shame and guilt. Like, I feel guilty about it because it's an event that I did, and shame is like, oh, I'm completely bad. Yeah, I get that. But you know what? It's like, yeah, I should feel some shame about that. And then I should work to overcome the shame and say, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And I'm going to repent and apologize and learn my lesson. And then you just kind of let it go, right? So let's see. As unique as we all are, an awful lot of us want the same things. We want to shake up our current less than fulfilling lives. Here's the universal we again. Speak for yourself, Brene, with the apostrophe or the accent, whatever that is. We want to shake up our current less than fulfilling lives. We want to be happier, more loving, forgiving, and connected with the people around us. Yeah, that all sounds nice, but it's like, I don't know. To me, that's cotton candy spirituality. Okay. I don't have to chase extraordinary moments to find happiness. It's right in front of me if I'm paying attention and practicing gratitude. Do not get me started on this whole fake gratitude thing that goes around where, the spiritual practices, oh, I'm going to write down what I'm so grateful for. This kind of relates to the privilege and being wrapped up in your bubble. I'm so grateful that I have my car. I'm so grateful that I have all my Western things and my toys and my stuff, and that, I can walk. I mean, yes, you should be grateful to that, but the wrong type of gratitude becomes narcissism. It's all about, look at what I have, as opposed to, I'd like to thank the truckers who have been delivering all of our food during the pandemic. And they did that even before there were any sort of protective measures. And they literally, for some of them, risked their lives to make sure that we all got fed. I am grateful to those truckers. I am grateful to God for creating me. I am grateful to my parents for raising me and feeding me and doing all these things. I am grateful to my partner for being there for me. See, gratitude that's only focused on what you have is in some ways narcissism. Real gratitude is being grateful to the other that has done these things. Does that make sense? So I am grateful to God, truckers, essential workers. That's to me better gratitude. Okay. All right. Want to be happy? Stop trying to be perfect. If you're saying that, you're still probably struggling with it. I'm not saying, well, you know what? That's fine. I'm not going to argue too much with that. Okay. Ooh, here we go. Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy. The experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. This is once again, it's not completely bad. So once again, I just want to make it clear. There's some wisdom in what she says, and a lot of what she says is probably helpful to people who are certain stages. But if you get stuck in that stage, you're still too focused on yourself. When I'm pointing here, I don't mean heart, I mean focused on you. And so, this whole thing of like, you're trying to fix yourself by trying to make yourself out to be this like amazing light thing. And it's not wrong to have a goal of trying to, spiritually improve yourself, but it's still all about you. And I think that ultimately is my problem. I keep repeating this. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Definition of courage: tell your story with all your heart. Why? I mean, sometimes it helps. I tell my story sometimes, some people listen, some people don't, but like, why? It doesn't really matter if I tell my story to you. That doesn't have any, it might be a little bit cathartic, but yeah, could be helpful, could be not be helpful. You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. There's once again a lot of gobbledygook, sounds really nice on the surface, but it ultimately that to me is not as profound as it sounds like it is. And it goes back to this like, me, look at me, I'm walking inside my story. Okay. Men walk this tightrope where any sign of weakness elicits shame, and so they're afraid to make themselves vulnerable for fear of looking weak. Well, that's an easy target. Let's target that the men don't like to be emotional. I've seen plenty of men be vulnerable and whatnot. So I'm not sure if that's universally true anymore. Vulnerability is not weakness, and that myth is profoundly dangerous. We could get into like little nitpicking here, but the definition of vulnerability is that you are weaker and you're vulnerable to something. Like, I know she's trying to say that like if you're emotionally vulnerable, you open yourself up, and that's quote unquote not a weakness, but it is a soft spot. Yes, you could be hurt. I don't know what she's trying to say. Vulnerability is about showing up and being seen. It's tough to do that when we're terrified about what people might see or think. Okay, so this is kind of appealing to the people who are so outward, and they're inward and outward focused, in that they want the outward to make this feel better. And they're constantly like, some of these people are the energy vampires, or some of them, they suck all the energy in the room because they're just like, they're so trying to fill this empty, deep black hole that's inside of them. And I'm not sure if this is really the right answer for those people. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. When she's so obsessed with trying to make this sound like it's not a weakness. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to disagree with that. I don't think vulnerability is the path. And I will maybe expound on that a little bit more. This is just more about what she's really trying to do is say, hey, you insecure person who's reading this, and you're all hung up on yourself and overly focused on your own worries about what other people think of you. You worrying about what other people think of you and feeling vulnerable about it is actually it's not weak. You're amazing. You're wonderful. here, feel great about yourself because you're all focused on yourself. Black hole people, maybe I should call them that. Through my research, I found that vulnerability is the glue that holds relationships together. It's the magic sauce. Oh, now she's citing science. Yeah, you can't quantify that. All right. Waking up every day and loving someone who may or may not love us back, whose safety we can't ensure, who may stay in our lives or may leave without a moment's notice, who may be loyal to the day they die or betray us tomorrow. That's vulnerability. Well, here's the thing. And I'm not married, so I can't speak to this, but I do have known people who've been like, my grandparents were married all their lives, like 65 or more years. If you pick somebody who is actually more of a loyal person, you don't have to worry so much about them getting up and walking out the door at a moment's notice. That's somebody who has some bad character, and I'd hope that you try to avoid that person. Then she's saying something about marriage. I'm going to skip that. Let's see. Okay. The dark does not destroy the light, it defines it. It's our fear of the dark that casts our joy into the shadows. Well, that's lovely, and it's nice to say. Once again, I just think it's a little bit cotton candy. Let's see. Understanding the difference between healthy striving and perfectionism is critical to laying down the shield and picking up your life. Research shows that perfection, once again, she's citing science, perfectionism hampers success. In fact, it's often the path to depression, anxiety, addiction, and life paralysis. Well, you know what? I can see how this would really appeal to some woman who is living in the suburbs and, trying to put on like good show about like, oh, we've got our kids going to the right schools. I've got the right signs put in my lawn. I've got the right causes that I'm cheering for. So yeah, I can see why this would appeal to these people. Why, when we know that there's no such thing as perfect, do most of us spend an incredible amount of time and energy trying to be everything to everyone? Is it that we really admire perfection? No, the truth is that we are actually drawn to people who are real and down to earth. We love authenticity and know that life is messy and imperfect. You know what? Actually, I think I think out of all the things that she's been quoted at so far, I like that one the best. I'm not going to have too much of an issue with that. Like I said, she's not all bad. It's just there's a big blind spot in what she's doing. Okay. The truth is, belonging starts with self-acceptance. Your level of belonging, in fact, can never be greater than your level of self-acceptance, because believing that you're enough is what gives you the courage to be authentic, vulnerable, and imperfect. Yeah. See, once again, you're still too focused on you. I don't even think about it. I don't sit there and think, ooh, there, and I even, it's kind of ironic because when I sang the Corner of the Sky song from Pippin, I said I never felt like I belonged anywhere, and I don't, because I'm kind of a weirdo. Okay, whatever, but I don't sit there and overly think it. Oh, if I have to believe that I have to believe them enough so that where is that even coming from? Okay, all right. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. And when we honor the spiritual connection, what does she mean by spiritual connection? Spiritually connecting with what? Let me read this again. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. And when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. Love is not something we give or get. It is something that we nurture and grow, a connection that can only be cultivated between two people when it exists within each one of them. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, and the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. Love can only survive these injuries if they are acknowledged, healed, and rare. Okay, I am so sick of this trite saying we can only love others when we love ourselves as an excuse for more narcissism, which is what it is. The new age people say it all the time. I am sick to death of it. Can we just like take that and just chuck it out the window? Because even if it had some meaning like 20 years ago, it does not have any meaning anymore. It is a meaningless platitude. It is just an excuse to say, oh, I'm going to focus on loving myself and put all this energy into writing affirmations about how great I am and look in the mirror. And it's like, get over yourself. Stop focusing on yourself. If we learn from the spiritual traditions of so many cultures, the the answer to that is to not focus more on yourself. It's to like go out and help some homeless people, or go put yourself into a closet, try to make the world a better place, or just focus on something other than yourself. Okay. Let's see. We cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. Okay, fair enough. Faith is a place of mystery where we find the courage to believe in what we cannot see and the strength to let go of our fear of uncertainty. Well, I don't know. That just sounds like, once again, it's more spiritual fluff and cotton candy. Nostalgia is also a dangerous form of comparison. Think about how often we compare our lives to a memory that nostalgia has so completely edited that it never really existed. Well, maybe for you. For me, my nostalgia is like, oh boy, I really enjoyed watching. Actually, I've been watching Splash, which is from 1984. That's nostalgia for me. I'm like, wow, look at those 80s clothes. They were so bad, but so kind of neat in a way. Here's Daryl Hannah. She was in this like bright blue long sweater thingy with a big massive cowl neck. Those classic 80s. That to me is nostalgia, not, I don't know, comparing myself. See, I'm not sitting here. The focus, I do focus on myself. Don't get me wrong. We're all narcissistic to a degree. I don't like focusing on myself. Right now, I'm trying to get everything healed. I'm trying to heal I had vertigo. I'm trying to heal my nerves. I'm like, oh, I'm so tired of focusing on my healing. I just want to stop focusing on myself. Oh, okay. So exhausting to focus on yourself all the time. Spirituality is recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us, and that our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in love and compassion. Practicing spirituality brings a sense of perspective, meaning, and purpose to our lives. Yeah, it's again kind of fluffy, like the kind of cotton candy, cheapo, mall spirituality. Sounds much more profound than I think it really is. Okay. Oh yeah. Here's one. We judge people in areas where we're vulnerable to shame, especially picking folks who are doing worse than we're doing. Well, okay, I'm here picking on Brené Brown. Am I vulnerable to shame in this area? Is she doing worse than I'm doing? No, she's the one with the $1 million books and the TED Talks and all of the people worshiping her. And I'm just like a nobody. I suppose you could say, oh, you're just jealous of Brené Brown. No, it's not that. First of all, I am pissed off that she's trying to like take that fame and use it as like a bludgeon to stop people from talking about things that she doesn't want them to talk about. So yes, I do have a problem with that aspect of she might be completely well-meaning. She probably thinks that she's trying to save the world while she's doing that. But that once again is going back to like, she's so caught up in her own world that she's not willing to listen to other people and why they might have a differing opinion, which makes her dangerous. Really, it does. It makes her dangerous. And I think some of her teachings are a little bit dangerous. Not so dangerous that I would say, oh, don't ever read Brené Brown. You can take what works with you and throw the rest away. But I just think that overall, the majority of what she teaches is this kind of pseudo narcissism, cotton candy fluffy pseudo spirituality that's kind of wrapped up in a nice shiny bow, and then it's made legitimized by her being on the TED Talks and her saying, well, I'm a researcher, and so she throws all this sciencey stuff in, or pseudoscience is really what it is. She takes her pseudoscience and packages all this up, and it's just a bunch of mumbly jumbly feel good emotion stuff that makes black hole people who are feeling disconnected from themselves or whatever, and they're living this kind of like fake world in the suburbs, it makes them feel good about themselves and inspired. But for me, it just never resonated with me. And I don't think that it actually helps in the long run, because it just gets people more focused on themselves. It just creates more narcissism. And American culture in particular has a massive narcissism problem. It is probably the mental health pandemic that we aren't talking about. And it's fueled by social media, and it's fueled by a lot of the the way psychology has been moving. It's fueled by the life coaching industry. I have, oh boy, I have some things to say about the life coaching industry because I've been in it, I've been in training with it. And one of the things I can say about life coaching in general is that there's a ton of people who are really fake, and they can't handle anything that is outside of their little happy, fakey worldview, and it's problematic. So unfortunately, I think that Brene Brown is contributing to this culture. And real spirituality is about connecting with God. And I know people don't like the word God. Well, tough. God is whatever you conceive of God as. God is the force. God is the, the Tao, which cannot be explained. However you perceive God. So in Sufism, which I study, the idea is and also in Buddhism, it's about getting rid of our attachments and getting rid of our attachment to ourselves and allowing God to come through us and to be servants of God and to service of the greater whole. And when you're focusing on that, you're not so worried about like, oh, I like so and so hurt my feelings. I mean, yeah, that you still get your feelings hurt. I still get my feelings hurt, but I don't need to make myself amazing because I have God and God's amazing. And so I don't know. I've now gone on too long, but I will talk more about this because this type of thinking is really, I think it's actually destroying a lot of people. It gets them too wrapped up in themselves and then they're still not happy. And we really, it's almost in some weird ways making people less authentic, because until you're fully connected, you aren't connected to your soul or your spirit. And so it's this kind of fake authenticity. All right. I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but I don't need to make everybody happy, and just trying to be authentic on my own way. And I hope you'll come back for some more thoughts from Stephanie. All righty, take care. Bye-bye.